Hi everyone, welcome back to Hadley's High Carb Kitchen. My name is Hadley, and I started this channel in an effort to combat low carb diets, low calorie diets, 1200 calorie diets, that kind of thing. Okay, so today's video, I'm going to talk about how to transition into a high carb, low fat, plant-based diet, or mostly plant-based. In my last video, I talked about how to transition into eating more plants or being more plant-based, but this is going to be focused on how to take it to the next level, how to go to that high carb, low fat way of eating. Okay, so the first thing that I would do if I was going high carb, low fat is to figure out how many grams of fat are in certain foods. So you can use tools like I mentioned before, like Chronometer or MyFitnessPal, you know, that kind of thing, because that will kind of give you your macronutrient breakdown. And if some of you don't know, your macros are your carbohydrates, your fats, and your proteins. Yeah, so you want to figure out how many grams of fat, how many grams of protein, and you could figure out how many grams of carbohydrates you were eating as well. I think I normally sit around 600 to 700 grams of carbs a day, depending on my activity level. But yeah, so you just want to kind of figure out how and what foods contain what macronutrient breakdown. So I would suggest, when you're first starting off, trying to stick more to 80-10-10. And that means 80% of your calories are coming from carbohydrates, 10% of your calories are coming from, just a little closer, there's some shadows going on here. 10% of your calories are coming from protein and 10% are coming from fat. So that's a pretty good breakdown. And if you stick to, like, you know, things like rice, potatoes, fruit, sugar, so basically fruit, sugar, starch, you shouldn't really have a whole lot of issues, you know, working out that macronutrient ratio or sticking to that macronutrient ratio. It should become pretty easy. So that would be the first thing that I would do. Is if you're not familiar with those types of foods, or you've never tracked before, or you have no idea how much fat is in something, I would familiarize yourself with these kind of foods. But the foods that you probably want to stick to are your fruits, your starches, and your sugars for sure. And you can include non-starchy vegetables here and there. I definitely do for your micronutrients. I actually prefer most of the time to eat my like greens and stuff raw. So I really like having a big salad, or sometimes I will literally just eat greens if I feel the need to, as opposed to making a salad, because sometimes I'm lazy and I'm just like, oh, I'm just gonna eat these greens. So yeah, that would be the first thing that I would do. The next thing I would do is to find foods that you kind of enjoy. That would kind of look like, you know, whatever you're used to eating. So say you really like rice, or typically everyone likes sweet things, so fruit is a really good option. The way that I choose to eat high carb, low fat most of the time is mostly fruits throughout the day, like kind of like a fruit till 4. And then in the evening, I will have a cooked meal of starches, typically rice or potatoes, sometimes pasta, sometimes like things like gnocchi and stuff like that. But I generally try to stick to like rice and that kind of thing. You can include beans here and there if you like. Like, there's nothing wrong with beans. The healthiest populations eat beans. You just want to be aware of the fat content. I think lentils are actually probably your best bet. Like, I think lentils and black beans are very pretty low in fat. The only issue that you might run into is maybe some digestional gut issues if you're not used to eating like all that fiber, and maybe if you're transitioning from just like a plant-based diet in general, that might not be an issue for you. But some people find that the beans kind of hurt their stomach a little. Yeah, so I would definitely find foods that you enjoy and a way of eating. And there's, you know, I enjoy, and I always recommend starting your day with fruit, a big fruit meal. because I find it hydrating. I find starches to be a little bit like dry, but if you like starches, then, you know, by all means, eat your starch, obviously. But I normally, like, for breakfast, typically I'll have like a juice with sugar, and just kind of like sip on that. Or I'll have like a banana, or I'll make like a limeade or lemonade, kind of to start, and that's typically before my training. And then if I'm not training in the morning, I'll have like a big smoothie or just like fresh fruit. Like, so like when I say big smoothie, I mean like 8 to 10 banana smoothie, or, you know, if you're a male, obviously that might look like more, just depending on how much, you know, how hungry you are, what you need. Yeah, so you definitely want to find those foods that you like, and for lunches, you know, more starch, or you can have fruit. I would say if you have fruit for breakfast, maybe have your fruit for lunch, and not just like have starch and then have fruit on top of it, just because fruit tends to digest a little bit more quickly than starch does, so you don't want it kind of like fermenting in your gut. I've had that before. It can cause gas and bloating, and nobody wants that, right? So yeah, I would recommend like having all of your fruit before your starch, and lots of people recommend that. So yeah, so you just got to kind of figure out like what you like to eat, and what are your favorite fruits, and what are your favorite starches. You know, that kind of thing is good. And if you're already well established with that, then you're ahead of the game for sure. Okay, so the next thing I would do is go by. So if you want to figure out like how, like, you know, are you eating enough? Are you doing the right thing? The first thing you should do is like ask yourself like, how am I feeling? Like, do I feel tired? Do I feel sluggish? Do I just am lacking in energy in general? Am I able to perform the way that I want to perform? You know, that kind of thing. You know, I can always figure out if I have or haven't eaten enough, typically by how I sleep and how I feel the next day. And of course, it's not just about the food. You want to make sure that you're getting in like good quality sleep if you can. I like to go to bed at 8-9 o'clock. This was not a huge transition for me. I would be in bed as a teenager by like 9 o'clock. I was always like, love sleep. My mom tells me that when I was a baby, I loved to just get into the crib and go to sleep. So yeah, so, you know, if you've had adequate sleep and you're hydrated. Hydration is another important one. So if you had adequate sleep, you've had your hydration, and you're still kind of feeling like kind of lacking in energy, kind of feel like, you know, you just want to go to sleep, you could just not be eating enough. And like that's how I typically tell if I've eaten enough, because, and this will take me to the next point, but I feel like you need way more than you think you do. So yeah, just like getting in those calories, and that leads me to my next point, is you need to eat enough food. And this can be a really hard one for people, especially if they're coming from calorie restriction, or you know, everyone's like eat less, move more, which is crazy, because you know, you need the energy to be able to move more and do more. And that energy should come from carbohydrates and not come from things like stimulants or caffeine, that kind of thing. Because that's not good for your adrenals, that's not good for your metabolism. Yeah, so it can be hard for some people. I know people have said to me like, oh, I feel awkward, or I feel embarrassed that I'm eating so much, and like people make comments, and like I've said in the past, people have made comments to me, typically like close family members are the ones who normally say things to me, like, oh, where do you put it? Or wow, you eat a lot, or like, oh, you're still eating, or oh, you're eating again, you know, that kind of thing. So it can be hard for people, like especially if they have those people saying things to them, or like, you know, you just come from this restrictive background where we're told that we should eat less. But like for me, and I've mentioned this in another video, my calorie ranges from 2,500 to 3,500. And for most people, they might think, whoa, that's crazy. Like how how could you possibly eat that much food? But that's what I need personally in my life in order to be able to be a mom, do my job. Like I have a very cerebral job where I'm problem solving all day, and even though I'm sitting, your brain still uses a ton of glucose. And I'm also currently training for some races, like I've mentioned, so you know, that takes a lot of energy, you know, so I need to eat more in order to keep up with those energy outputs. And that kind of like, I know a lot of people are like, oh, I have to train, like if I burn off 1,000 calories, like that's good, like that's how I'm gonna lose weight kind of thing. But the way I look at it is when I'm like, okay, I burned 1,000 calories, so I need to make sure that I eat in a surplus in order to kind of make up for those calories that I've burned off, to make sure that I'm not depleting my glycogen stores and that I'm, you know, that kind of thing, so I can perform the next day. Because it's not, in my experience, it's not calories in, calories out. And I know everyone tells you that, but you know, there's no way that I could eat 2,500 to 3,500 in things like McDonald's or KFC or like super high fat foods, because I'd blow out like 1,000%, because carbohydrates are processed differently in your body than fat. Fat is stored directly into your fat cells, whereas carbohydrates are either stored as glycogen or burned off as dietary thermogenesis. And that's only the case if your body does not think it's in a starvation state. If you have been under eating chronically, your body's going to think it's in a starvation state, and it is going to store all of those carbohydrates as fat in order to make sure that we survive through the next famine, kind of thing. Yeah, so eating enough is very important, and coming back to like how you feel. If you're not sleeping well, or you're just feeling tired and you're not performing in the way that you want to, you definitely need to up your calories. You don't, like, I say you don't need to be scared. It is kind of scary, and you think, oh, I'm gonna gain weight. But if you don't, like, if you're not in a calorie restrictive state, you probably aren't gonna gain weight. You just need to eat more calories. You need to fuel your body properly. And it's taken me a long time actually to figure out exactly how many calories and how many carbs and how much food I actually need to intake for performance in athletically and in life, pretty much. Yeah, so oh, and I wanted to touch on protein, because I know everyone's always concerned about protein. I would just say that all plant foods contain all of our essential amino acids. That's one thing I want to start off with. Also, the RDA for women is 46 grams of protein a day. The RDA for men is 56 grams of protein. That is what we need. That is the optimal, and that will put you in that like 10% of calories from protein. Yeah, so you don't need, like, I know everyone, when they transition to a plant-based diet, or especially a high-carb, low-fat plant-based diet, they're like, oh, but what about the protein? And it's like, protein, in my opinion, is overhyped just to sell you animal products in general. Like, honestly, that is what I think, because we really, like, do not need that much protein. If you look at the healthiest cultures in the past, like I'll use the Asians as an example, they were eating basically 80-10-10 diet. 90% of their calories before the 1980s came from white rice. They were the healthiest, leanest population on the planet. So and yes, they did include things like soy, and occasionally they would have, you know, fish, I believe. So, you know, you can obviously be healthy, including tiny amounts of animal products, and you can still stay high carb, low fat. It might, yeah, just using the Asians as an example, because, you know, they're a great example of how you can eat high carb and, you know, you don't have to worry about protein all that much, and you can be healthy, lean, and fit for life, kind of thing. Yeah, so I think that covers all the points. If you're having struggles sticking to a high carb, low fat diet, you know, follow me on Instagram, follow Nutrition by Victoria on Instagram. There's tons of people out there who, you know, are doing a high carb, low fat, plant-based diet and making it work for them, and they have for years. Like, for example, Victoria has had you know, 3 very healthy pregnancies, 3 healthy children, has breastfed all of them. So, you know, she's she's a great example of the lifestyle for sure. But yeah, if you're having troubles, you can follow her, you can follow me, you can feel free to DM me or reach out to me if you ever want to like chat about anything, high carb, low fat, plant-based related. I'm always happy to answer questions if I can. Yeah, so I hope this video was helpful. If you liked it, just leave a comment or thumbs up, and I'll see you guys. I'll see you guys in the next video. Okay, take very good care. Bye.